Chris, thank you very much for having me along to Burns Cottage. I'm delighted to be here. I've lived here for years and years and years. I've not actually been into the cottage before, so just pretend I don't know anything about who Robert Burns is and tell me why he was so famous and all about this lovely cottage.
Well, I'll start by telling you what I tell a great many of our visitors here, and it's my opinion. Now, this funny wee building, this is where on the 25th of January 1759 Robert Burns comes kicking and screaming into this world, born in the kitchen there of this funny wee cottage, a cottage built by his own father. This is the origin story of Burns, our national bard. And why is he important? Well, he's a world-renowned poet. He was famous in his own lifetime. He achieves a degree of fame in his own lifetime that a lot of modern poets would love to have. The notoriety that he had. Hundreds of thousands of people a year come here to see this funny wee cottage and see where this great story began.
Superb. Well, shall we go inside and have a wee
Let's
wander?
have a look. Well, if you've not been, I think it's about time you got inside, Sheila.
Isn't it?
Come away in.
Oh, this is good. What would this place be then?
Well, interestingly, or perhaps uninterestingly, there's not a lot I can tell you about this room in terms of the Robert Burns attachment to it. This is the barn in Burns Cottage, we call it the barn. But this was actually added after the Burns family left here, this room and the byre. But we maintain it as a building of the time. This is as close to the original footprint as we can now get. And if you look into the roof space, you can see agricultural tools of the sort that would have been used in the 18th century and far beyond that, up until comparatively recently.
Oh, so this looks like the byre.
It is indeed. This is a byre. Again, a word that we use in Scots language, it's used in Northern England as well. And again, this wouldn't have been here when the Burns family were here. So the original 2 rooms are the next 2 rooms. So that simple 2-roomed footprint. And this, I'm going to say something that's familiar to Scots across the generations, a button bed, a simple 2-roomed house. There's almost a kind of standard footprint for them that were used for cotters for centuries. But this is the byre, and we have it looking as a byre would have done at the latter end of the 18th and into the early 19th century. So the cows be kept in these little stalls here. They'd probably be sort of multi-purpose beasts that would be good for beef and dairy, but used primarily for dairying, and of course a stall for a horse. Most farms would have had a horse. At the time of Burns, no. The Clydesdale emerges as a breeder around about 1830, or it's identified as a breeder around about 1830, but a progenitor of that, a sturdy multi-purpose beast that you could hitch to a cart, a cow cart or a wagon. That's one of the great things about this space as an educational resource. It allows us to branch out into all sorts of things. So you can have a conversation in here about the development of Scottish agriculture. You can have a conversation in here about the poetry of the 18th century in Scotland.
What is the most popular questions that you get when you bring round children round here?
That's such an easy one to answer, Sheila. Where did they go to the toilet? Time and time again. And you have to have a fairly frank conversation with them. And I've seen little jaws hitting the floor before, where you point out that there may have been something under the bed for during the night, or next to the bed with a cloth over it, or they'd go out to, there would have been an earth closet nearby, which would have been a movable thing. You know, it's basically 4 flimsy walls around a hole in the ground. And so people were living a fairly primitive life then. And to this day, there's no modern plumbing in here. So if any of our visitors need to go, you have to just cross to the pavilion over there.
So this is the good room of the button ben.
The good room, we call it the spence now. And it's interesting, I've done a wee bit of research into this. So spence is, again, a Scots word, and it means the middle or the inner room of a house, a sort of central space. What I can tell you is that between about 1800 and 1881, this building was run as a pub, a tavern. It had come under the ownership of a local trade guild, the Incorporation of Shoemakers of Ayr. They had rented it out to various landlords down the years, and it was run as a pub. And if I can just show you something on the back of the door here. Now, you don't tend to think of graffiti in a modern sense as being historically significant, but if you look at that, it's a wonderful thing. This is a document in itself, this door. Probably from the time of it being a pub, people would come here to visit the home of the birthplace of Robert Burns. They would leave their mark with their penknives on the door. Of course, we absolutely discourage people from writing or carving things on the walls now. But this is brilliant. It's got almost like a beautiful patina on it. And I happen to love it. I love the care that's gone into it. And I'd be the last person to pour water on the valiant attempts of the modern graffiti artists, because some of them are wonderful. But that's just regular folk coming in and carving their names. And you can imagine this at a generally very convivial atmosphere in it here at times, you know.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, you can totally see it as a pub, couldn't you?
Absolutely.
You really can.
So I said to you that this is the most important wee house in the whole of Scotland. I can take you into the most important room and the most important wee house in the whole of Scotland when we go through to the kitchen.
Okay. Oh, and finally, a nice cosy part of the cottage with some kitchen, some nice fire, somewhere to cook, and a lovely bed.
Absolutely. So this is the kitchen. This is the hub of all family life. You know, if this is a button ben, this is the ben part of the house. You know, come ben. You know, to come in, to be made welcome. You know, this is where family life happened, because it centres around the hearth, the heart of the home. So Burns, his earliest thoughts are formed in the surroundings of this little cottage, and that is why it's so important. You know, this is what starts the Burns story. The Burns story tracks all over Scotland. He takes on his tours. He goes over the border into England for 2 or 3 very brief occasions on his Borders tour of spring 1787. But of course, he's innately bound up with us as a people and with this place as a country. And I often think if you're going to distill Scots culture into a few people, you know, Burns is absolutely one of them, because he helps us define who we are as a people. And it starts right here. It starts in this room. There's the bed where 25th of January 1759 Burns enters the world. I like to think it's sometimes due to the parenting skills of the 2 amazing people that sat in these chairs, William and Agnes, and they kept this a happy house. And he was a happy wee boy who grew up with a love of books and a zest for life. And that's what gives us the Burns that we know and love today.